Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. That other badass jet pilot, my man, the guy who watches my six, my friend, Dr. Paul Thompson. How are you, Dr. Paul?
Hello, Commander Drew, and I'm very good this morning. Good to see you. Hope we're going to have a nice show. We're going to put out some good information and hopefully brighten somebody's day.
Hopefully, that's why we're here. All right, we start off with a quote every show, and this week's quote is, one of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make other people happy. And the best way to make other people happy is to be happy yourself. That's a great one. That was by Gretchen Rubin. I'll do it again. One of the best ways to make yourself happy is to make other people happy. And the best way to make other people happy is to be happy yourself. You like that, Dr. P?
Yeah, that's very nice. Be happy yourself, because I think a positive attitude just kind of emanates from a person. You can always tell if someone is in a good state of mind. You can tell when they're in a bad state of mind,
Aviation kind of taught us that. Put on your oxygen mask first before you do anything else, before you help anybody. Meaning, take care of yourself, huh, Paul?
That's true. That's a good point. You say oxygen. When you say oxygen mask, I thought you were going to talk about, flying your A6 jet. But but they tell that to the parents. Basically, you can't really help anyone else till you help yourself. That's a good analogy.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. I appreciate it. Dr. Paul, we have a conversation today. You and I are both parents. We both raised two children. Dr. Paul, something very bad happened, I believe, in Michigan, and some young person killed 4 or 5 people, whatever. And that's not the point of this, but his parents were just charged and are going to jail for 10 to 15 years. Dr. Paul, do you think parents should be responsible for their children up to criminal charges and going to jail?
That's a loaded question. You could come up with a yes or a no. And I guess for a little background, in terms of parents being held responsible, sometimes that could happen. That happened with me, actually, personally, many years ago, for something I didn't do. I didn't do it at all, but I was kind of caught in a dragnet sweep, so to speak, fair or unfair. Some money had to be paid. So typically, when you think about parents being responsible, I typically think about maybe property crimes. But if you look at what's going on now, there's an uptick in violence, and young people today, or in the last, say, 20, 30 years, are doing things that we hadn't done before. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Dr. Paul, let's be honest. If these parents can go to jail for having their kids kill somebody because they were irresponsible, what about the parents? What about these deadbeat dads who leave their children? Aren't they responsible also? Maybe they should go to jail, because that's not good parenting when you're not a parent. There's a lot of responsibility with raising a child, Dr. Paul.
Yep. And you've got deadbeat dads, and now you've got some deadbeat moms too. It's not just one way. Yeah, the male gets that stereotype, but there are females that do the same things. Sometimes they're together, where no one's raising a child, and the child grows up like a wild weed in a lot somewhere.
So I'm asking you, are they responsible? And should they be held criminally responsible for bringing a life into this world with no direction, it looks like, and then the kids wind up doing anything?
Okay, well, you're saying, abandonment is a crime. Well, men and women now pay child support, but it gets a slippery slope. How do you prove that they left? You mean they're physically gone, or they're just smoking dope, watching TV, and are present? This gets complicated, because this is in Michigan, right? This is in the state of Michigan.
Right. This was in Michigan. The young man killed people, but the parents had ammunition in the home. They talked about guns. They were kind of, real flamboyant with firearms and everything. And this kid, he gave them signs to help. Please help me. Please help me. And they didn't.
Yeah, and I'd read something about that. Yeah, that flamboyant part you talked about is probably what sealed the deal on them.
Well, that's
Instead,
like, these politicians now taking pictures with AK-47s with their children and their wives and sending them away as Christmas cards.
Christmas cards. Yeah, that's that's unique. But in terms of having them charged, I think it's a reaction. I wonder if that's going to be. Do you think that's going to be a thing that'll go across the United States? We
Well,
just
yes, because Dr. Paul, what do you think about, kids now will tell a parent, if you spank me, I'm going to call the police. I wish I would have told my dad that.
the police. Well, you're an old person. You're so old. You're so old. 911 wasn't even invented yet. So
Oh,
you
that's
couldn't have said, there's no one to call. You'd have to call on a rotary phone.
all
It's
right,
true,
Dr.
right? Am I
Paul.
right?
No, I guess you are right. Definitely I would have had a call on a rotary phone. Yes,
Oh,
you are.
man, hopefully it's not a party line and it's busy.
Well,
Now,
talking about kids, how about this party line? I'm not that old, Dr. Paul. Dr. Paul, but they did a Pew Research and they found out that almost 46% of children between 18 and 34 are getting financial help from their parents, and about 30% are living at home. Dr. Paul, what's going on?
it's simple. It's called inflation, and stuff is expensive. The economy is shifted. It's not we talk about getting education, going to college. Yes, of course, do that. But every major in college doesn't pay. Excuse me, that's the bottom line. Everything doesn't pay. At one point, if you did have a college degree, you might be able to put on a coat and tie and a suit and go somewhere and wear a white flower in your vest or whatever. They used to do that at Macy's and be an executive, quote unquote. That time is long, long, long gone now. You really coming out of college, you really need to know something, have a skill or trade. Trade. I don't know if I should use the word trade, but you need to have a skill that's marketable. And what's marketable? What's the market?
Well, Dr. Paul, you have raised two children. I have raised two children. We are cool ass, badass jet pilots, but as parents, we're just like regular parents. My kids don't live with me. I raised my children to take care of themselves. I raised my children that they didn't have a choice with education. I raised them for them to become nucleuses of their own once they left the house. You did the same.
Yeah, and
So
then
there has to be some kind of responsibility for parents raising their children right. Yes, when you come out of college, a lot of these kids have college debt, which is crazy. But why go to a college you can't afford? Maybe go to a less expensive college. I went to a black university, but I went to a black university because I got a full scholarship there. And not that that was any different. I didn't know. But I don't think you should go to a school that you can't afford if you're going to pay for it for the rest of your life, if you're going to take a major that doesn't pay. See,
yeah,
remember, being happy is about doing something you love. Right, Paul?
right, yeah, yeah. You do something you love, but the challenge a lot of young people have, they're not sure what they want to do. They're really not sure what they want to do. So they go into something and find out that with AI and changes in technology and competing on a world stage with folks from around the world, what was secure, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago may not be secure now. We don't need that. We can get it cheaper. So you really have to be alert into what the changes are, what the trends are, where do you see a future? And that's hard to predict. In terms of, and I'll just finish with this, the college debt, yeah, and a lot of those parents are paying those debts too, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. We talked about the Mackenzie Scotts and those who are philanthropists giving millions or billions of dollars to people to go to medical schools and things like that. That's great. But everybody else they're paying stuff that they really they won't be able to pay off maybe until they're in their 50s, if then. So this stuff is too expensive and everyone's kind of crushed. Don't you think gas is a little expensive, gas and food, compared to what you spent like in 2016?
Definitely more expensive, but it depends on how much money you have. People
Mhm.
with money don't think it's expensive. People
Mhm.
with no money think it's expensive. And
Mhm.
that's why we both push kids to go to college, because in college, you can find out other opportunities, other occupations
Mhm.
that you never might have ever known about. Dr. Paul, I'm going to ask you this question. You know what a herpetologist is?
Herpetologist. How do you spell that? H, is it APHERP? Well, I guess the answer is no.
Dr. Paul, my son taught me this, so don't make like I'm smart. A herpetologist is a study of lizards, snakes, and reptiles. And the herpetologist at the San Diego Zoo makes 250 grand a year. My point being, what about a kid who loves reptiles, but he doesn't realize that that can actually be an opportunity to become a professional in that? If you don't know those occupations out there, if you don't know that there are things out there that you can do, how do I expect you to do them? Everybody, I believe, Dr. Paul, is a LeBron James in something. You just got to find out what that is. But we all have a special talent. And I'll tell you this, somebody with a talent and an education cannot be stopped, Dr. Paul.
I agree. And that goes with what you've talked about many, many, many times is the importance of reading and the importance of travel. If you put those two things together, what you're talking about as a young person, if you can, you're more likely to find things that you wouldn't normally see if you're just sitting at home watching TV all the time and playing games.
Well, once again, welcome to the Wingmen Show. Check out those badass jets we got behind us. Now, behind me, I have an A6 on the catapult with bombs ready to go. That was me. Behind Dr. Paul, he has his jet, an A7. That's a beautiful A7 you got there, Dr. Paul.
Yeah, isn't I came across this picture, just messing around. It is a beautiful picture. I guess I don't think they were all made like this. I guess it was taken during Desert Storm. Sometimes they'll paint up a particular airplane for a show or demonstration, but that was a unique desert paint scheme that I thought I would include today.
Yes, it is. And we have a great wingman, Dr. Paul is going to tell you about. I don't think garbage men are always garbage men. Everybody out there, thank you so much for watching us on YouTube, for listening to us on Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio, watching our clips on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you so much. We also have a newsletter. Our newsletter is at wingmanshow.com. That's wingmanshow.com. We have a newsletter that comes out every week. Matter of fact, this week's newsletter is how adults can easily learn today's technology. And that has something to do, Dr. Paul, with the letter we got this week. We got a letter from a 35-year-old man from Louisiana. His father is college educated, but he thinks he's willfully ignorant about technology. He also thinks we're the best podcast in the world, and he loves listening to us. And thank you very much for that. But his dad doesn't want to know technology. I'm going to throw this one first to you, Dr. Paul, because without technology today, you're done.
Yeah, you're right. You are done. Okay, he's 35 years old. He's talking about his dad. I'm going to say his dad is probably, around my age or close to it. So I think I'll throw it back like this. He refuses to learn. Probably he is intimidated. He's probably intimidated by it and doesn't really want to admit it, and it was just kind of plod along. And his son will suggest, why don't you do the guy? I've experienced this myself, so I can talk on it. Why don't you do it this way? Why don't you do it that way? Like he said, like, I don't know. Nobody ever told me because nothing's written down anymore. It's always like some young person that teaches you to do this, that. If he doesn't have that, maybe he doesn't, he's doesn't live with his father. His father doesn't know. I've got friends like that too. They don't know. And he'll probably take the position that he's actually intimidated by it, but he doesn't want to admit it. but instead he'll act as though, who needs all that fancy schmancy stuff? That kind of
Very
attitude,
true.
kind of a boyish, but in reality, he's clueless. He's really looking for someone to lead him. Sit down with him and show him some easy stuff. Work him into it. Don't go into some complicated program. You got to do 700 things to spell your name. Do something like nice and simple. Show him some easy way, like one step at a time. And that's it. And see if he knows that one step later on. And then maybe do the 2 steps. Something's convenient. Because like you said, because think about how would you be, for example, you said you weren't flying for a while, you had a little medical issue, and you had to come back after a long period of time. Describe what it was like, coming back and relearning not only how to fly, but just the administrative stuff to get yourself logged into a computer system that didn't exist when you left.
Well, after 12 years of not flying, I was scared shitless that I wouldn't be able to do it, but I had definite positive thoughts that I would be able to do it. So my conviction in my heart, and what happened is I worked my ass off. I worked my ass off and I started flying again. But yes, it was hard. But getting back to this guy with his dad, this is what I suggest. Find out what he likes. Let's make believe he likes basketball. Why don't you go to get him an Apple iPhone? First of all, I believe in Apple. I'm an Apple man. I've always been an Apple man. Apple is probably the easiest one to learn on. But get him to an iPad or an iPhone and then show him all of LeBron James' famous dunks if he hits 5 buttons. Get him motivated to want to do that. Find a game like Candy Lane or whatever those games are. Maybe find a game that he will like to do. Because what you have to do is first, Dr. Paul, get him in front of the screen, comfortable, enjoying it. But the main thing is get him to do something that wows him. And the more it wows him, the more he'll want to do it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy, because the son, who's 35 years old, he grew up playing video games. So a lot of those things are natural to him. They're unnatural to his father. So just as the son, found some games that he liked or whatever, do the same thing with your dad. Find something he likes and let him just play with it. Just little, you can teach principles sometimes through play.
Very good. And you know what that brings us to? It brings us to a Wingman PSA from the 11 Facts in Life. This is on the fact number 7. Sometimes surrender to win. Sometimes surrender to win. Dr. Paul, I'm a winner. I'm a winner. But sometimes you have to surrender to win. The Japanese, let's just take, when they got bombed, do you know if they wouldn't have surrendered, there probably wouldn't be any more Japanese people on the planet today. But now they're thriving and they're a great, great country. Sometimes you have to surrender to win. And so maybe this father, you know what? Why don't you surrender to your son so you can win in the long run? And one more thing about technology, Paul, you have to know it because you're not going to be able to go to a concert. You're not going to be able to fly in an airplane. You're not going to be able to do anything real soon unless you have a smartphone.
Right.
So that's really important, don't you think?
Yeah,
Paul?
you're right. You said the smartphone or computer, and if you're looking at us and listening to us, you're on technology already. We're using technology to record this broadcast. You're using technology to see and listen or listen.
Let's give him the gouge. And you know what the gouge is? In the Navy, you said the gouge is information that you need to know. And I say it's shit you need to know. You ready for the gouge this week?
I'm ready.
This week, from the Food and Wine Global Taste Testers, this is a survey. I'm going to give you the top 10 international cities for food and drink. And coming in at number 1, Dr. Paul and I've been there many a times, is Tokyo, Japan. I love Tokyo, and the food there is great. Don't you think, Paul?
Yeah, well, I ate, what did I love the noodles everywhere in Japan. I specialize in the noodles and even some of the fried rice, but the noodles were fascinating to me because no 2 places were exactly the same.
That's very
One
true.
better than others.
Number two, I haven't been there yet, but I can't wait to go, Dr. Paul. Istanbul, Turkey. I do love Mediterranean food, though, and I bet you the food there is the bomb. Istanbul.
It probably is. Never been there, but we had a good friend that's Turkish, and she introduced me to something called tabbouleh.
Oh,
Never heard of
yes.
tabbouleh and feta cheese. This was a long time ago. It was
Love it.
fantastic. She said, "Well, what do you mean? That's just a standard thing." And it's from where she's from. It was,
Number three,
yeah.
Mexico City. My son went to Mexico City. My daughter has family in Mexico City, and my son said it was the best food he ever tasted. He went to so many restaurants. He just loved it. I haven't been to Mexico City, but he said the food there was great, Paul.
I'm sure it was. One part of Mexico. I've been through the airport there, flown to the airport a few times, but I don't remember staying there. Spent time in Guadalajara, which was that was excellent too.
Number four, we go here. Remember the weekend we took? You, myself, and Keith Miller, Paris, France. You had three black pilots taking a 777 to Paris for the weekend. Yes, it's the American dream. Paris, France has wonderful food. France does all over, don't you think, Paul?
France is great. France is great. I've every once in a while I hear somebody say, "I didn't like the food," and I'm thinking like, "Where did you eat?"
How about when we used to be in the Navy and the ship would pull into France and you'd have some sailors going right to McDonald's in Paris?
Yes, yeah. Sailors and airline pilots. There's on.
Yes. Number five, I haven't been here either, but I know South American food is good. Lima, Peru.
Never been there.
All right. Number six, we've been here. Rome, Italy. Best pizza I've ever had was in Rome, Italy. Rome, that's real Italian food there.
Yeah, it's funny. Italian food in Italy can vary quite a bit from Italian food in the U.S., generally speaking. And I hate to burst people's bubble, but Olive Garden is not genuine Italian food. Maybe it's the closest you can get, but no, that's not genuine. Yeah, I love the Italian food in Italy. Just have to get used to the pasta is a little firmer than the way to do it here.
Al dente. I love firm pasta. Number seven, we love this country, Singapore. It was the best seafood buffet I've ever had in Singapore. What a great city that is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And realize Singapore, it's not that big. You can walk you can walk most of it in a reasonable amount of time. Things are close together. It seems like a place of like 20 or 30 million people, but there might be like 2.5 million, and 80% of those are people working there from outside the country. Their national dish is red chili crab.
Wow.
Had that a few times. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. You have to work with a fork to get it out there, but it's worth the wait.
Well, I'll tell you what, Singapore is one of the safest cities I've ever been to. You can walk around there at 3 o'clock in the morning with $100 bill taped to your head, and nobody will say a thing because they have caning. Number eight, Copenhagen, Denmark. Now, when I went to Copenhagen, I can't remember that the food was good, but that's what they say. Number eight is in Denmark. Number nine, we've been here, Osaka, Japan. Once again, Japanese food. And they also say in Osaka, there's all international foods, not just Japanese.
There are. We used to live over by a couple train stations, and there's all kinds of things. It's amazing how much stuff is in Osaka. There was a noodle place that I liked that someone showed me that it was like an Indiana Jones thing to find it. You had to really work, but it was worth it.
I remember that. I went there many a times. And the 10th one on our list, where I'll be going in a couple of weeks, Madrid, Spain. I'm not going to Madrid, I'm going to Barcelona. But Madrid, Spain, Spanish food is delicious. Paella, woo, baby.
Yeah, get some original paella. It's hard to find in the US, and I haven't found anything as good as in Spain. But even there, typically they don't make it for less than maybe two people. Generally, it's like four. So maybe hopefully you can get some. You don't have to have a crowd with you.
Well, the name of our show is The Wingmen Show because we always promote people helping other people. And that's what a wingman does. He looks after his friend. He checks his six, meaning he looks behind him when the guy can't see behind him. You have a wingman on your side. And the wingmen this week are a couple of garbage men, which Dr. Paul would rather say are sanitation workers, and they're from Tipton, England. Dr. Paul, you want to tell us about our wingman of the week?
Yeah, our wingman of the week. Sometimes wingmen don't wear capes and they may not fly. They may wear a reflective vest. So there are two wingmen this week are Steve Whitehouse and Kevin Marriott. Steve Whitehouse and Kevin Marriott. And they were trash collectors in Tipton, England, which is about 140 miles northwest of London. It's a little place. I guess it's a modest town of 45,000, 48,000. One day they were collecting trash and they heard these screams and the fire had broken out in a flat. They call it a flat. It's an apartment. British people use the term flat apartment. Americans use the term apartment. But broke out in an apartment or a flat, and a woman was screaming, and there was fire engulfing the dwelling. And it was Steve that went up and rescued her, went up to the balcony, brought her down, but there were other people up there. There's another person, this young man. He went up and brought the young man down, but there was a dog, and guy screamed for his dog. So Steve went up and brought the dog down. He did 3 trips. Meanwhile, his partner, Kevin, was alerting the other people to get out of the homes because those homes are attached, generally speaking. And the fire was going to race from one to the other. And eventually the fire services got there and got things under control. But they said if it hadn't been for those 2 guys, there would have been a lot of casualties to that fire that just popped out. So, those are our heroes of the week. They did a good deed. Tipton, England should be very proud. And sometimes your wingman and your mutual support can come from a place that you don't even suspect.
Well, great wingman story for Steve Whitehouse and Kevin Marriott. They really did save 3 lives, and that third life is a dog. And I think, Dr. Paul, they threw the dog out the window for the other guy to catch him even, because they wouldn't leave unless his dog went, which I understand completely. But those wingmen really did save some lives. Dr. Paul, anything that you and our viewers and listeners, anything that you think is important, anything that you think is beautiful, and guys, whatever makes all of you happy, may you have that today and forever. Dr. Paul, I pray for peace.
I pray for peace every day, both domestically and internationally. Appreciate all those who listen, like, and share our message. Please pass this on to your friends and associates. It would help us a lot if you give us a like, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Just click the like button and click the notification bell icon so you'll get an alert every time we have a new show. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.